County Commission orders I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open the meeting with public comment for issues not on the agenda. Public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I have a letter. I have copies for all three of you. And I was just asked to read this, and I want, it's from Steve McCullough. It is not, I don't want to confuse anybody because I'm the secretary of the trust board. So it's not from the trust board. It is from Steve McCullough personally, but he asked me to read it because he's hunting or something. Dear Commissioners, I regret not being able to attend your November 5th meeting on the silos lease. I have a final thought on something I would like you to consider. We, Commissioners, assumed the manager position from the BOR some years ago. Our intent was to complete the reclamation of the bay, provide improvements, and return the management to the BOR. The county liability is a ever-present danger to the taxpayers. If someone is ever injured, we, the county, are the first deep pocket for lawsuit. We all carry insurance for such matters, but we all know the risk. The county receives no benefit from being the manager. Your costs always exceed the income. As you have seen at Goose Bay, BOR has the resources to do terrific improvements. I understand BOR will be cooperative if you elect to cancel your BOR agreement. Page 11, paragraph 17 on termination may be waived. The county's mission of improving this area has been accomplished. Cancel your risk and move on. Please give this serious consideration. Steve McCullough.
Thank you, Dan. I guess we will go ahead with the approval of minutes for October 29th, 2018.
Move to approve said minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Motion made and second to approve minutes from October 29th, 2018. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
A bill from the city of Townsend for the extension building says since extension is out of the building, who's going to pay? I would assume this would be forwarded to the hospital district, since they're managing the building now.
Yeah.
Project proposal from the Helena, Lewis and Clark National Forest, Strawberry Butte Front Country Trail Management Project, 30-day comment period. Have two letters here from the Broadwater Trust Board. The Broadwater Trust Board has voted to table the grant application. This is to the Broadwater County Recreation Board. Broadwater County Trust Board has voted to table the grant application that you presented October 10th, 2018. The request was for $24,350 and the project name was BOR Acquisition Project. The Trust Board takes every grant very seriously, and this decision was completed after much thought and due diligence. This is a second letter from the Broadwater Trust Board to the County Commissioners. Says the Broadwater Trust Board has voted to approve a grant for the Broadwater Recreation Board for $20,000. The Trust Board urges the Commissioners to approve this as soon as possible. These funds are to be used in consideration of the contract with Great West. The Broadwater Trust Board is encouraged by the direction and future of the relationship with the Recreation Board. Broadwater County has a wonderful opportunity to increase recreational opportunities in the county by these boards working together. Thank you, Virgil Binkley. We need a motion to approve this grant then.
Also move.
No, second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the Broadwater Trust Board grant to the Broadwater Recreation Board in the amount of $20,000. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. A receipt for restitution from Bill Flyner in the amount of $632.52. Townsend Tree Board bill to cover the 2018 tree watering project expenses. Senior Centerson Boulevard, Museum Boulevard, Medical Clinical Boulevard, $140. Contract with the Department of Health and Human Services. Public Health and Safety Division. Budget period grant guidance attachment warrant express. Ongoing.
Yeah, that's the FIP
Okay.
grant. We've already signed it 10 years. This is a task order renewal for the new year. I will move that we sign the FEP grant with the PHHS as presented.
Is there a second?
No, second.
Motion been made, second to sign Department of Public Health and Human Services contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried. Claims approval list in the amount of $109,184.98.
I move to approve the, I move to pay the approved claims in the amount of $109,184.98.
Is there a
I
second?
would second with the exception that I think the county attorney had ordered some of those not to be paid. I think there were a couple of claims there. I don't know if they're in this or not. But I seconded exceeding those claims.
Motion been made and second to pay claims in set amount. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion
Well,
carried.
I'm opposed on the part that, until we know for sure those claims that we're supposed to, told not to pay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Is there any listing or public disclosure of the claims that Mr. Swift?
I'm looking to see if they're in here right now.
Okay, just
We're
wondering
talking
what.
about the MVAC and
Yeah.
DCDC.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
Joy.
Chairman.
And those claims are not on this, in this batch.
Yes, these I'll change my vote to accept.
Motion's been made, seconded to approve claims as submitted, all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Motion to have a payroll summary for the payrolls for 10/31/10/31/18. Total of $174,866.21. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I can make that motion to approve payroll in the amount of $174,866.21.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to pay claims in said amount. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. I guess we can go ahead. Let's see, Corey, if you're ready, we can go ahead.
Okay.
You guys have the White Horse Road stuff I gave you? Any members of the public want copies of the White Horse Road stuff? I got 4 copies. Anyone want one? Two more here if you want. All right, so we got several items here. I guess we could start with Longhorn Driveway. So the Longhorn Driveway situation is we have not been able to locate this owner. We've had the sheriff's office out there, looks like 10 times, 2, 4, 6, 10 times, trying to serve him at all times of the day, different days of the week. Haven't been able to locate him. This we have here, this is the matter where for the subdivision that comes off Antelope Road, this gentleman has a driveway that is not authorized pursuant to the subdivision regulations, as well as the specific conditions that were for that subdivision. And bottom line is, he's got an access point that's not lawful. So there's 2 options. I think one, we could just authorize the road department to obstruct or remove that driveway. Slightly risky. I don't know if he'll turn around and sue us or not. The other option is we actually sue him for an injunction to do that. So either option I think is we're able to do it, but I want to leave it to you as to those 2 options. But either way, I have not been able to literally hand him the letter. We've been trying for a year now that says you can't have this driveway here. We've tried certified mail, it hasn't worked. We've, like I said, tried personal service, it hasn't worked. So, but we need to move forward on this, because I know from talking to Mary that there's some other unauthorized accesses in other parts of the county that we're gonna have to start dealing with, and so we're gonna have to start, I think, basically we need to treat them all the same and take action against them, so. those are my thoughts. Either option I think is fine. I think in terms of giving him more due process, it would be to actually sue him and get an injunction and go through that process. He can defend it. Or we could just obliterate it, and then he would have, burden would be on him to sue us to get it put back in which case we wouldn't be forced to put it back in because it would be unauthorized access. What are your thoughts?
I think your second one, I was gonna give you one more chance to, how was it again? How did you have that word? Was it bring suit against him?
Yeah, we would basically file a lawsuit against him and seek an injunction saying you can't use this roadway and then a court order to remove it. So,
Only problem there is you can't never locate him to get this other information. How would that take place?
well, so once you file a lawsuit, there's one more additional option available for notification. That's called, well, there's two more, but in this case, it would be most likely one. And that's service by publication, where you publish it in the newspaper. But we were gonna do that with this, but when we went through the regulations for that, you have to actually have a proceeding filed before you do publish. But basically what it is, you publish it as a legal notice in the local newspaper 3 times, and then you provide that to the court. And if all your efforts to locate him have been unsuccessful, and you've done that, then that's considered adequate notice for the lawsuit.
So the issue with that driveway is that it's on a corner, whereas the subdivision approval did not include any approaches onto that road, plus that approach he's got in here is right on the corner, and it's a safety issue, is that right?
That's correct. So the subdivision allowed a road off of Antelope Road that was the internal access road for the subdivision. It's called Tumbleweed Trail. And then all the lots had access off of Tumbleweed Trail, the internal road. And it specifically said no additional access points off of Antelope. Well, his lot happens to be positioned where it is next to Antelope. So he went and built another access point. So he's got 2 access, one internally off of Tumbleweed and then the second off of Antelope. And that is the other issue, is that it's right on that corner. The whole point of that is that they just, Antelope's kind of a higher traffic county road, and you're able to get off the highway and then proceed a little bit on Antelope before you have the road into the internal one. So, now if every lot does that, you're gonna have 10 different exit points off of Antelope Trail right along that area where the county's approved one.
I appreciate what you said, Corey, about treat them all the same. I think we all know that we have a number of these coming up.
Yeah,
So
Mary's
to
told me
let
about
one
that.
go puts us in a pretty slippery slope, I think. So, yeah, I think we had talked about the service by publication this summer.
So we found we weren't able to do it by the rules of civil procedure, so I have to file a suit before I do it, before it's fully correct, or else what I have to do is serve it by publication, and it doesn't quite meet the rule, and then file a suit, serve it by publication the second time, is what we'd have to do, so.
So do you need us to authorize the suit in order to pursue the service by publication? To communicate with this guy?
So, the way that works is that you file the suit, and once it's filed, then you have, every lawsuit in the world, you have to personally serve somebody, okay? And that could be where you, sometimes they have a lawyer and they just say, we'll accept service, you email it to them, you're good. Some, which we've done in the Two Brothers Tires case. Or some where you actually pay a fee to the sheriff's office and they go up and personally serve it, like the sheriff's done repeatedly this year with Joe Schmouse serving me. So there's all these options. If it's a corporation that has a registered agent in the state, they have a registered agent listed at the Secretary of State's office. You serve that registered agent. So in this case, we have a guy who's a resident here who we just can't locate. We've had the sheriff's office out to serve him, like I said, 10 times, and we've picked all times of the day, including evening when he might be home. So the last resort is you just publish it in the local newspaper that does the general circulation, that does the legal notices, which would be the Broadwater Reporter. So Now, if we get this thing filed and we run into him the day after and we can serve him personally, then we're off and running that way.
Okay. So do you need anything from us on that subject then?
Just, would you rather go the route of suing him, or would you rather go the route of road department just goes out there and removes it and says, there you go? My only concern there is, let's say he's coming home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night and goes to turn in and it's no longer there and he ends up in the ditch and then sues us. That'd be my only concern. I want him to have plenty of notice before that thing's removed.
I'm not a fan of suing. I don't think it ever benefits anyone, but I think it's our only option. You don't, you're not too excited about the road demolishment option?
Well,
Based on that, I think the other one
it'd be
makes a lot
fun,
more
but,
sense.
you know, there might be some kind of unforeseen thing that comes out of it that we would later look back and go, yeah, that might have been not the best option.
The other way, I think, puts us on a stronger path to try and communicate. And I will say 10 seems low, because I've seen deputies on Antelope Road at all hours of the day and night.
Well, who knows what they were doing out there? They might have been responding to something else.
So is there a motion then to have Corey proceed with the legal proceedings to have this approach removed?
Also move.
Motion been made and second to have Corey lead the legal proceedings. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Okay. Second issue, I think, I'm just kind of going through the easy ones. So the issue with the modular building that Doc Campbell's using for his medical practice, I put a memo in your file or on your boxes on Friday. So I visited with him and his attorney, Chuck Pataya, a couple different times. And so what you see here on these 8 points are their recommendation of what they'd like to accomplish. The point that were the two that I know that the county was focused on are number 7 and 8, which is, well, more than that. 2 and 3, pay utilities and pay property taxes. And then, so I'll just run through them. So basically, he'd like to continue his medical practice. He doesn't know an exact time, but he's until he retires, up to 3 years. In that building that's right at the courthouse facility. Number 2 is he would then pay the utilities, and I know he has been paying the utilities and the water. Number 3, pay property taxes once the building is transferred to his ownership. Number 4, his recommendation is, because he's currently is the county health officer, and he's getting, I don't know, it's some amount, some stipend. I think it's $300 a month, but I'm not sure what it is. He would agree to serve as the county health officer without compensation for the remainder of his medical practice as part of his use of the building. Number 5, they would conduct all routine maintenance as well as any major repairs. Number 6, they would accept title to the building as is and not require the county to conduct inspections, repairs, or warranties. Number 7, the county would transfer the title to him, and whenever that would be, whether it's now or at the end of the period. And number 8, when he retires or changes location of his medical practice, then he agrees to bear all the costs of having the building removed and bear the cost of lawful disposal. And what I would recommend is we do something where, to our satisfaction. So like if we remove it and then there's still, say, a bunch of cinder blocks or, you know, other things that need to be cleaned up as well as just removing the building, that would also be part of his obligation. There's two thoughts on this. One is, I know it had been discussed that maybe there's a rental rate that we need to charge that's more than this. And that certainly could be the case. My concern is condition number 6, which is if this is county property and we're doing a landlord-tenant situation, you know, we have an obligation, unless he waives it, to go in, do a full inspection and probably some significant repairs if we're gonna ask for a market price that's beyond, you know, what's recommended here. And my guess is that we would regret having to go in and refurbish that whole thing for maybe only 2 more years of service. So I just ask you to keep that in mind. So if you want to recommend any changes to this, let me know. I've met with Mr. Pataya a couple times, and I've gone through the building, not as a thorough inspection, because when this was proposed, then we didn't set up an inspection where Mike was gonna go inspect the building. But we can draft this pretty quickly and probably be about a 3 or 4 page agreement and get it done if this is what you wanna do. If you want any changes on this, let me know and we'll go back to it.
I think it sounds okay to go ahead with what you have there. And apparently they're both him and his attorney in agreement too, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a couple of questions. Title VII, Chapter 8 talks about how the county can sell, lease, property. And what it says here is, you have to get an appraisal, you have to put it out to public auction if it's over $2,500. If you can't get somebody to bid on it, you can sell it, after the public auction for 70% of the appraised value. There's a process for getting that appraisal. So for us to give a county asset to a for-profit business, I don't see anything in MCA that allows that, so if you could help me with that. And then also, we had a lot of angst, and still have, over not having enough money for budgets for what everybody wants for their individual budgets. So I agree with you on the refurbishment, but if you compare that building to other buildings that need work in town, the per foot rental charge is $5 a square foot. If we had an agreement as is, much like the professional building is probably the closest comparable, then that brings into the county about $1,330 a month, $15,000 a year over 2 years, which is what we've been working on. It's almost 3 actually. It'll be 3 at the new year. That's, $15,000 a year that could have helped with some of our department's desires for more money. It's $30,000 over 2 years, $45,000 over 3. So if this were a not-for-profit, then I think we have a stronger conversation ability. But being a private for-profit business, I'm not so sure that this is the best use of the taxpayer's asset. And I'm not so sure that Title VII, Chapter 8 allows it.
So what are you recommending then?
I would like to discuss a rental, per foot rental. The 3 years that's in your memo was actually from 2 years, almost 3 years ago. But I think we need to discuss a rental fee that's fair, a policy that any other property, as a government, we should not be undercutting private businesses. So we have people who own property in town who rent it to viable businesses. This is a viable business, we're undercutting those other landlords. So I think we need to determine what is the going rate locally for a premium building like Leonard's, the old creamery, or a building that needs a lot of TLC, like this modular. I think there's also rental agreements that if a person puts in money to fix up a building, that you can offset your rent that way. But I think there's some things we need to do other than just giving an asset to a for-profit private business, especially without any reference to the MCA that allows it.
Okay, so that wasn't their preference, that they take ownership of the building. That was, the concern that you expressed to me was when he's done, whether that's 1 year, 2 year, 3 years from now, then the county owns that building and that location and doesn't want to own the building in that location, so we have to bear the cost of removal and cleanup and disposal. So they'd rather go back to some kind of a straight rental deal, but then we're responsible for all the maintenance and whenever he decides to retire and is gone, we're responsible for the disposal. So that cost was kind of figured into this obligation at the end, number 8. That's gonna be a big chunk of change. And that was part of what I thought we were trying to go to. So if you wanna go back to where the county owns it, then, number one, we don't get his property tax payment, whatever that is, it's probably not very much. But then secondly, we're on the hook for what I think is a bill that isn't due now, but at some point it's gonna be due, so. Whatever you wanna do is fine with me, I'll go back and retool, the approach here, so.
If we did a lease, we can put the fixing of the building on the leasing, versus a renter situation.
If they
But
agree with it,
also,
yeah.
we had an employee that, violated this MCA, the 2,500 threshold of MCA. I'm not comfortable after that, even before that, violating MCA when there isn't some MCA that says that this is allowable. We're, again, giving away a county asset, because it's easy. When the MCA, the only one I know of, and again, you're the attorney, so if there's something that we don't know of, we need to see it in the memo so that we know that we're moving forward in a way that's lawful.
Okay, so the concern though is that this thing was thrust upon us, it wasn't ours, the hospital owned it, and then they basically just handed it over with a bill of sale and said, here, it's yours. And so the reality is the tenant had some rights in that were not really upheld. I mean, they had a right of prior notice, some of those things, so that's my concern, is that this isn't like it's a empty brand new building or even an empty, moderately used building where you have people that are bidding and competing to come in and use that. This is somebody who's been there for a long time, and then without prior notice or approval or anything, the ownership just changed hands, and they found out about it after the fact. So that footing of what we do here from the standpoint of equitably making a deal that works matters. I'm fine with going back to whatever you. I don't think we're giving them a building. They're ultimately going to have to pay more to remove that than we're going to get from rent for the next 3 years. So I hope you guys are tracking that. But if you want to do a lease, and then we're responsible for the building when they vacate it, we can do that. Do you want to move in that direction?
I don't think so. For one thing, like you mentioned, all of a sudden that building was just supposedly deeded to the county. And if that's the case, he could probably bill us for all this maintenance he's been doing these last couple of years too. I feel where they're comfortable with that, those 8 reasons there, I'd say go along with that.
Mr. Chairman, do you guys want to do a motion, or do you want to think on this and we can come back to it?
I agree with both of them. I agree with Franklin that, this thing is gonna be if we start charging him rent, we're gonna have to start doing maintenance, and that's gonna kill us, and then when he leaves, we're gonna have to get rid of it, and that's gonna kill us more. But on the other hand, I don't know how we can transfer property to a private person.
All right. Let me go and look at that, do some more. Do you want me to explore with them if they're looking at some other option on lease rather than sale? And
I would
we
say
can come back on
definitely
this.
lease over rent, but I just wanna know we're solid on MCA, that we're not violating the law by doing this, because that benefits nobody also. We're just paying more fees in another area as well. So,
When's your next meeting?
19th.
Is that a Monday? Okay. I could come back to you in 2 weeks with,
I think so, see if there's something we can do with this title and say something about.
and I'll also, if you want me to talk to them and see if a plan B is on the table, if they're interested in it?
it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
And it might be a good idea to have an estimate of what it would cost to move that building too. so that we know what we're talking about in dollars and cents.
Okay. Sounds good. So what do you wanna do next? You wanna do White Horse Road, or you wanna do Winston Tire lawsuit?
Winston Tire, some that you might wanna leave after it's taken care of.
And I'll preface my remarks by, I don't wanna talk about this in too great a detail, because this is a lawsuit against a private entity. And so I'll tell you what I'm happy to tell you as far as money goes. I don't wanna get into litigation strategy, but I'll start off by saying, so we sued, there's two entities, two plaintiffs. One is the county on behalf of the Board of Health, and the second is Montana DEQ. Two plaintiffs. We sued Two Brothers Tires, as well as three individuals that are all the Smilovich family, for operating an illegal solid waste disposal system in our county by Winston. And this case has quite a bit of backstory, which I know you're well aware of, so I won't go through all the details. But right now we have, according to the defendants, at least 5,000 tires, or up to 5,000 tires, that are illegally stored there and disposed at that site. So at the request of the Board of Health, and all three of you sit on the Board of Health, as well as Montana DEQ, I sued them, and as far as the beginning of a civil case, you really can't get any better than how we started off. We got a lawsuit filed, immediately got a restraining order, had an injunction hearing, the court granted the injunction. In granting the injunction, the judge indicated that there's a likelihood that we will succeed on the merits, not the defendants. And then we also have a contempt of court motion pending because they allegedly violated the restraining order, hauled additional tires there after the restraining order was granted. So as far as moving on, we're definitely in the driver's seat. There's some things that have to happen to get to the point of winning on the merits. And in every civil case, one of the next phase is called discovery. And discovery is where you dig for information. And there's my guess is there's a lot of documents in this case. I've identified multiple witnesses that I need to depose. And when you do a deposition, by court rule, you have to, number one, they're present. You give them notice, you subpoena them, that they have a defense attorney that's present, and then you have to hire a court reporter. And that's where the biggest expense usually comes from a deposition. Sometimes document copying and things like that, but that's pretty minimal. But when you hire a court reporter, then they not only get paid by the hour, but then you also have to pay for the transcript. And because it's a civil case, you don't use the court reporter who's an employee of the court system. Those are specifically for court hearings or for they're for court hearings, that's it. So you have to hire another court reporter, you gotta pay that cost. So in the world of civil lawsuits, the client pays those costs. And we have two clients right now. We have Montana DEQ and we have the county on behalf of the Board of Health. So what my request was, and I had no idea it was gonna turn into such a big deal, was, hey, I have to spend some money here on this civil case in the next stage so we can proceed. And DEQ, I talked to them and they said we're happy to pay half the cost because we're one of the plaintiffs. And so I was asking the county to pay the other half. Now, what was, I'll just stick with the facts. I won't stick with the anything else that was exchanged in the communication. But what I was told is you have money in your budget, you pay for it. Well, first of all, I don't have a lot of money. I mean, my budget's going down, and specifically in the litigation funds available. I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but I had requested a litigation fund 2 years ago of unspent money to be carried over. It was about $12,000. That money was removed. And last year, I had much more. I had about 12 to 13,000 of unspent money, and I asked for 8,000 of that to be carried over, and that was removed. And in both instances, when I first met and proposed my preliminary budget, the county commission said, yes, that sounds reasonable, we can do that. And then when it came to final budget time, that money was taken away. So if you look at my budget, I've got professional services, I have professional fees for attorneys, and I have contract services. Those are probably 3 possible places where this money can come from. Well, we have a very big, messy criminal case that was on the verge of settling, that has not settled, that at this point, I expect is going to either go to trial or at least go to the point where I have to retain some experts. And there's, if this case goes to trial, then I'm going to use up all that money and need more, okay? And that's what, at the time we talked about this, I in fact raised this same issue. And I was told that if you need money for litigation, then let us know and you'll get it. Well, I'm not asking you right now to sign a claim. What I'm asking you to do is to allow me to pay, I have to pay for a transcript of the hearing we already had, and then to schedule depositions, and as those bills come due, to be able to pay them out of the fund. Now, if you want to exhaust all my money here, that's fine. Come January, when I have a criminal case that I need this money and it's not there, then I gotta have a county commission that says, yeah, we've got you covered here. So we've had multiple budget years where, number one, when I came in, my goal was to reduce expenses. And if you follow my track record from 2015 on, I have found places where I thought I could cut money. I've cut too low. Office supplies and materials, we're gonna exceed that this year. There's a publicity subscription and dues, that one's a question mark. Because there's some things you have to purchase. Every time there's a legislative session, you have to buy the new version of the edited law and the annotations. You have to, or else you're operating on old information. Those are expensive. I have to pay certain fees that are just part of the business. So, but in each of these budget years, I have said I need a fund for litigation expenses that right now, on June 30th, I can't tell you exactly what they're going to be, but they're coming. And some years we've had to pay them. In some years, cases settled and we didn't. And in the cases in the years when we didn't use the money, I've been very clear, this is unspent. Take this back, but I'm asking this to carry over. So it seems like each year that I'm not being listened to when that happens. This year may or may not, depending on if these big, messy criminal cases settle or if they go to trial. This may be the year when those things are coming due. But all I'm telling you right now is, if there's this belief out there that I've got all this money and that I'm asking for unreasonable amounts of money, I'm not. It costs money to do my job. It costs money to bring people to trial. And I'm not asking for a Cadillac version of anything. I'm asking for you to say, yes, spend the money that's needed to win the lawsuit that we're currently winning, and let's get our job done. That's what I'm asking for. And if somehow that's been perceived as a threat, that's not a threat. That's not in any way a threat. I'm excited about this case. I'm happy to do this case. It's going to be a fun case. I think we're going to be successful. But we're here, and we got to get all the way to here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, right now, there's money in your budget. We just passed the budget in August. We can't do kind of the a la carte. What we have to do is give you a budget at the beginning of the year. We work with every department head to kind of figure out what that is. There's never enough money. You know, nobody's happy about that, but that's the way it is. So we do the best we can with what we have. That includes your budget. So the way the budget process works is you've got your budget here. we do bottom line budgeting, so you can use those line items you talked about, you can combine them. We did increase your budget this year by $7,300, $7,391 if I'm not mistaken. So what we have always done, and we will continue to do, is if you get to the end of the year and you have some kind of an emergency, something unforeseen, come see us. But we cannot do more à la carte at the beginning of the budget season, because by the end of the year, if something happens, we will have nothing to work with. The budget process solidifies a budget. This is a sound budget. You have the money in your budget. This is a great case. It is a strong case, and I'm really encouraged by what you've said. But you have the money in your budget. So what I would suggest is just work within your budget and continue to communicate with us. If something happens in April, May, or June, we can continue to work together. Excuse me, but you do have the money in your budget. And I will say, kudos to you for saving money. If you guys look, a lot of you have this. If you look at fiscal year 16, 17, it's kind of at the, right under the blank here. Corey took his budget from $235,000 to $179,000. What he got was a grant from the Board of Crime Control that paid for more of one of his staff. So that's really good, and that's what helps the rest of the budget. But that is also where you see the increase from last year, which is really what we're looking at. So you have the money. We absolutely have supported you, and there's a solid record of that. So what I would say is just continue to communicate with us.
I'm just-
We gotta assure him that money's gonna be there to cover it. That's the reason that you always have a good cash reserve, so you can take care of these emergency things. I call this kind of an emergency deal, because I never thought of that some of these things are gonna happen. But the way we spent a bunch of money, we don't have enough there to, well, there should still be enough maybe to get you covered, but it's gonna be marginal. I feel we've gotta assure him that he can go ahead and
And
his
Franklin, we
job.
did increase it by $7,300. And that's in the budget sheet. I see you have one there.
Can I have this budget sheet that everyone else has?
Mm-hmm.
So, part of what happened here also is that the funds that we saved last year with that grant, I specifically asked for some of that money to come back in another form where, because we had to do a couple of things. We have the Barris case, and we wanted some part-time help there. We wanted some money for a criminal case, and here's the problem. I get the perception that, I feel like I'm getting this message of, I don't know, the majority of what I do is criminal law, like the vast majority, 90% of what I do. And these criminal cases, some of them, I mean, most of them settle. We go to trial when we have to. But when I build this budget, what I'm looking at is roughly we get about 50 felonies a year, and we get about 300 misdemeanors a year that come to us, okay? And so that's what we're dealing with. The civil stuff is completely unforeseen and in excess of that. And we talked at one point a couple years ago about the idea that if there's a civil case, and I'm representing whoever, the road department is gonna end up paying the cost of that case, okay? So that's my concern, is fine, I can take, no, I'm not saying it was passed, I'm saying that was a discussion.
That's a slippery slope.
That was a
would be
discussion that we
awful.
had, And so when I build this budget, I'm number one telling you, I'm concerned this isn't adequate for my criminal caseload, and you're saying, you told me fine, when the money is needed, the money's there. And then on top of this, now we're gonna do civil case, a great civil case, happy to do it, but again, those are expenses that I certainly never anticipated when I was building this budget. And, so if you're telling me that, fine, proceed and spend the money, and then when I have a January, February trial, and I have to, I mean, the case that we're talking about, we have to bring DNA experts from Salt Lake City. We're gonna bring a an expert witness to testify who's from Arizona, okay? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And if that case goes to trial, we have to spend that money. I don't have another well that I'm gonna be dipping into, okay?
That's not Barris.
That's not Barris.
Okay.
And I would encourage you to come anytime you wanna sit down and we can talk about my criminal cases, I'd be happy to do that. Anytime you wanna come to district court, see what we do, I'd be happy to have you come there. I interact with you a lot on this, and this is not even close to the majority of what I do. The majority of what I do is working with the sheriff's office on an entirely different world that I'm concerned that you don't have visibility on, and I'm concerned that some of these costs are things that, there's certainly stuff we can't control. We don't pick these, they come to us. We get the call in the middle of the night that somebody did something stupid with a weapon, and we have to respond. So, that's my concern. Now, we've talked a lot, I don't know if there's much people from the public that wanna talk, but,
Mr. Chair, if I may, and I guess when we're looking, and maybe this is something that in future past, you know, the criminal side has a cost to it, the civil side, we all know the civil side is very, very expensive. That's why Mako settles almost every one of them, because the fact is that it's cheaper to settle it for something than it is to take it to trial. So I think that in the future, one of the things that the county needs to look at is having a civil litigation fund and a criminal litigation fund, because they are two different animals, and the cost is way through the roof. The other concern I have is going on the basis of spend the money and we'll figure it out in the end, is in this budget cycle that Barris money was taken out of the county attorney's budget, said it was put in another line item to be accessed at a later date, but then ultimately it was taken out of PILT by a motion in a commission meeting to take that $100,000 out of PILT. So, which makes no sense to me, is if it was taken out of one account, put in another to be accessed, why did we take it out of PILT? So I guess I have a little reservations about just go out and spend money and then hope for the best at the end of the day, because we've used PILT for a whole bunch of stuff this year. And I don't think anybody has a clear idea exactly what dollar amounts left in there, nor can we foresee the future of what's gonna happen in the next 7 months of this fiscal year. So, you know, I guess I would, you know, in my opinion, strictly my opinion only, would be that we find some sort of revenue to put into a civil litigation component. So this isn't trying to figure out which one's more important. They're both important. They're equally important, just in different capacities. And I think that that's hindsight. And obviously sounds like we got more civil litigation coming up with these unlawful, unauthorized approaches to county roadways. We're gonna keep having this conversation. So I think that this would be an appropriate time where the county commission establish some sort of funding mechanism for these civil litigation components, which is in the best interest of the citizens. So that's my opinion.
I want to add something looking at this. So you're saying it's a $7,000 increase in my budget. There's only two things in my budget that increased. One of them is this line 330, publicity subscriptions, etc. And if you recall, that was money that originally, a lot of that was originally funded to the district court for the law library and for our legal research. And we were way short last year. So that increase, that's from $1,200 to $4,000. That is simply replacing funding that originally went to the district court. And the second area where it increased is way up at legal services, salaries and wages, $143,000 to $150,000, which doesn't make any sense because everybody's salaries were frozen. Well, the reason that's more this year is because last year I contributed all that money from my salary into the Barris case. So it is not an increase. That's money I would have been paid last year if I hadn't contributed it to the Barris litigation fund. So that should be the amount that were appropriated anyway. So the reality is my budget didn't go up at all. It moved from district court funds to my funds to pay something that's been paid for the last 30 years. And then secondly, I didn't give the money out of my salary for one of my cases. And on that, as I told you, I've consulted with the Attorney General's office. The whole point of that was that I was gone for military leave more than 120 hours. And so the question was, well, can you get paid for that? And I talked to the Attorney General's office and they said, you're an elected official, the military leave doesn't apply to you. But I'd already agreed to give that money, that salary, back to the county and specifically to the Bears Fund, so that's what I did. So I just think we need to be clear, I'm not cutting a fat hog here.
We don't have our finance officer here, Mr. Chairman. We've been through this over and over and over again, and frankly, a lot of people are not happy they didn't get all the money they wanted in their budget. If we're gonna keep going, I think we need to have this on the agenda with the finance officer and let her have some opportunity to be prepared to explain the process, explain why things are done, perhaps even call in Mako to do a budget 101 so that we can all get on the same understanding. We don't have anything from the Attorney General's office in writing. What we do have is 2 attorneys who said that it was unlawful, the way you were paid. That's fine, you've paid it back, no harm, no foul. You have a solid budget, not as much as you wanted, nobody does. But it is a solid budget, and you are the county attorney, you're not the county prosecutor. So you do need to use your budget for all of the things that fall under the county attorney budget. But yeah, I think if we're gonna go any further into going around and around, we need to put this on the agenda in 2 weeks with the finance officer and perhaps Mako so that we can have an informed
You're the one
discussion
that
for
brought
everybody.
this out, I didn't even know it was passed out. And you're the one that brought it out, showing everybody that I've increased by 7,000. I'm just responding with what the facts are. We don't need a budget 101, I'm just telling people when they read that document, that's why those 2 line items went up. That's it. We don't need to bring in Mako to explain line 330 to everybody.
And that's not what I was suggesting, Corey. What I was suggesting is we're going around and around and around on the budget process. Instead of wasting time today doing that without the finance officer here, let's put it on the agenda, bring her here, give her a chance to be prepared, perhaps bring in Mako and talk about the whole budget process.
Okay. All I wanna be able to do is do my job and know that if I have to spend money to prosecute a case on behalf of the county, that I'm not gonna get left with, well, you expended funds beyond your budget, so you're now personally liable. And that, those words have passed your lips in the past,
Corey,
and I
this-
don't want that to come up.
This commission has never put anyone
I didn't say
in
this
that
commission.
position. We haven't.
I didn't say this
So
commission.
we have such a solid record of working with a variety of department heads who've come together or come to us at the end of the year and said, or even at the beginning of the year, we've got an emergency, we didn't see it coming, and help us out. Our answer is yes, 100% of the time. So something came up in my budget, I'm gonna overspend, I forgot to include LexisNexis, like you did last year. What did we do? We found money and we put it in your budget so that you were made whole. We have a solid record. All we're asking is use your budget, but work with us. We've made a solid budget together through the process. You've got it, you've got the money to pursue the Winston Tire issue. By gosh, let's do it.
All right, then,
Mr. Chairman, if I
Question I
may.
have, they've said that you're the county attorney, not the county prosecutor. Who's the county prosecutor then if it isn't the county attorney?
I meant not just. He's also the civil attorney for the county, Franklin. and
Well,
that's-
yeah, I know
That's
that.
in law. That's in our law books.
Some comments from the public.
Mr. Chairman, I'm John Willoughby. I'm representing the Winston Tire Group. And I'm willing to tell you that I'm not willing to piss away any more of my personal time and funds to come over here for meetings because you can't make a decision, okay? All these people have jobs. We're the ones that are paying the taxes in this county, and we can't get a straight answer. Corey needs the money to do his damn job. I don't care where you get it from, but where you're about not to get it from is the taxpayers of Winston if we all file our taxes in protest. Do your damn jobs and get them done. This is a valid case. You're gonna make more money than that off of this case when you're done.